Will, very good to have you on here, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
The most recent release from Shannon The Clams is the new 7 inch.
Uh-huh.
With it, now, dude, I had this right. It's the last recording of the Moon is in the Wrong Place sessions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right
Yeah, I
on.
think we recorded something like 16 songs and we only put 14 on the record, so now we drizzling out the last of it. Yeah.
These are the last two gems of it.
Mm-hmm.
With
Exactly. Yeah.
and that's with I'm a Fool, and you sing lead on that one, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Now, is it the first time that you're singing lead on a Clams song?
No, there's one on the album called UFO that I'm singing as well.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with this album is it's the first time that you're lending lead vocals to two songs.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
that like for you?
It was cool. It happened really organically. There wasn't a lot of talk about it. It was just sort of like when we were writing the songs for the record, we were hanging out at my house for a few days working on stuff, and everybody was just kind of throwing in ideas, and those two were just two that survived, I guess. It's like a little, yeah. If everything gets thrown into a pot, and a lot of stuff, you know, um, you know, I don't know, sizzles away, but some of them, some stuff lasts. Yeah, yeah.
Have you performed both those songs live since their releases?
Yeah, yeah, we've been doing UFO pretty much since we put the record out, and then yeah, this last tour we did, we started doing I'm a Fool. So yeah, we've been doing them both. It's been fun. It's been fun to play those live.
Is it ever nerve-wracking for you to start playing some new stuff live for the first couple of times?
Not really. I Because I don't know, you play the same songs for so long that it's just like a joy to get to do something new. It's more joyous than nerve wracking. I mean,
Yeah.
Clams isn't a band that practices as much as we should probably. So there is a little bit of that. Like, I hope we don't blow this because we've only played it like two times or whatever. Um, um, but but yeah, I love touring because you get good at playing songs over. You play them night after night, and like I love like 8 nights into tour how things start to really start to feel solid, and you start feeling a bit more freedom within the songs because you're loose. You just like not thinking about it anymore. You're just playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything surrounding music that makes you nervous at all now, or not so much?
I mean, I wouldn't say I don't get nervous, but I think that nerves are really good. Honestly, it just like it cranks you up and gives you the energy that you need to like be compelling. I think like if you're just totally blasé, I think the crowd's gonna feel that you're blasé and like not get much from you. But if you have like some like nerves in you, I think it's good. I think it's good for just making people excited. But like I don't really have like debilitating nerves where it makes me super uncomfortable. It's more like I don't know. I have experienced that. I experienced that. It's strange because Clams at this point have played pretty crazy venues. We've done a bunch of arena tours and stuff, opening for people, and we've played, just to giant crowds, and those don't make me nervous. I kind of like dissociate or something, like it's just sort of like it's so large that you're just sort of like, whatever, nobody's here. And the crowds that make me nervous are more like I've been doing my solo music, and I play, when I'm playing by myself, just no other band, I get a little more nervous, just like, not having the security blanket of a bunch of other musicians, and or very intimate shows are more nerve wracking to me than been a big old show. My eyes are like, starting to not be as good as they once were. And so like when I'm at a big crowd, it's just kind of a blurry mass of people. And they're like when you're playing a huge show, there's usually like a space between the stage and the audience. So it's just sort of like abstract. I know I can see people, I can see their faces, but like it's not like I can see like every like
Minute
detail of,
detail, yeah.
yeah. But like smaller show, it's like people are just like right up in your face, and it's like, hey, like it's you and me, we're looking at each other, uh,
Do you pay attention to the crowd's reaction when you're playing live, or is it not so much of where your attention is going towards?
yeah, I get a lot from the crowd. They I mean, it definitely makes you feel like you're doing something right if the crowd is uh you know visually enjoying it in some way. But that's another weird thing is like, you can get addicted to people being like, ah, you freaking out. And like, that's not always, depending on the kind of music you're playing, that's not always what they're going to do. They might be having a different kind of reaction that's just as intense, but it's not like visually, crazed, and
Yeah.
like, you gotta keep that in mind too, because sometimes you play like these slower songs or something more, contemplative, and people are reacting in a whole different way. That's maybe more intense emotionally, but they might not be freaking out. And I don't know. I've had to keep that in mind through my different iterations through music, like because the first band I played in was kind of a party band, and so like I just like wanted people to be like freaking out all the time, and eventually I started doing stuff that wasn't necessarily that, and like it took me some time to understand that people were still feeling it, even though it wasn't the party freak out vibe.
Right. Do you
Yeah.
feel like the opposite would be the same if you were coming from a more subdued background within music and then going into like a party band? Would you be like, "Whoa, this is too much for me to handle"? Do you think like that would be also true?
I don't know because that wasn't my experience, but I mean, maybe it's like it depends on how intense it was, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like It's like, the Beatles experience of crowds screaming so loud that they couldn't even hear what they were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably be like, depending on your point of view, like my point of view, I'd probably be like, this is great. People are freaking out. But if you were just got really used to people just having, I always talk about this because I, my, my old band, we were touring a lot, and then my band basically fell apart because people weren't able to tour at the pace that we were like getting offers to do stuff, and so I ended up recruiting like a completely different band to go on a tour, and we had to play the songs differently because different musicians played different instruments. It was just a whole different like skill set, and we played a much like quieter version, and we were opening up for. Do you know who the tallest man on earth is?
I've heard the name. I'm not familiar with the music though.
He's like a singer songwriter folk finger picker guy, and he was playing by himself. And so his crowds, it was huge rooms. It was like, I don't know, 1,000 cap rooms of people that would just stand or sit silently and listen. And it was really unnerving. Like, I was just like, what are these people enjoying this at all? They're just like, they're just staring at me. But then they would clap between songs, and then they'd shut up completely, and I was just like, this is bizarre. But then they would buy a ton of merch, and I was like, oh, they liked it, like like it's like I didn't understand at first. It took me a while to understand that was uh what was going on.
Yeah, they were still
Yeah,
appreciating it just in a different sense than you were used to at the time.
yeah, yeah, and it was a mind fuck for me to just even understand what they were feeling.
Right. Did you feel yourself? or you were changing as well with this new iteration of the band that you were in at the time. Did you feel yourself sort of adjusting to what everybody else was bringing to the table at that point?
Yeah. Um, it was welcome. I like change. I'm like a believer in, you know, music is this collaborative art form, right? Like, and that's something that I've struggled with because I'm a loner. You know, like I like working on things by myself. I like making things by myself, but you can't really play in a band by yourself. You know, like it's not even very fun to do. You know, like I've tried to figure out ways to like put on a show by myself, but I don't like it. Like I much prefer to play with people, and that's this weird contradiction with in myself is like being this loner who really enjoys solitude, but also loves to collaborate. You know, make music, which takes collaboration, and I've really embraced that over time. Just like anybody who you add to the equation really brings their own unique flavor, and like you feel it in the most subtle things. Like you can have the exact same band change out a drummer who is trying to play the beat that he heard on the record, but he's going to play it with his own flavor. Every drummer really brings a really unique feel, and like that's true of any musician to any. Everybody's really got their own special magic, and I love that. I love. So yeah, I always enjoy seeing what happens when you bring new people into the mix.
Yeah, going back to this fresh release here, do those songs still feel new to you? And does The Moon Is in the Wrong Place, that whole album, does that feel new to you still?
Yeah. Um, yeah, Clams, when we work on stuff, we generally record it and then just don't really look at it, touch it again until it's time to play it live, So we record the album and it takes how many months or a year or whatever until it comes out. So at that point, it's always like, oh yeah, like what do we do? Like what how did we play this? And on Clams albums in particular, I do a ton of overdubs. Like there's always like, I most Clams songs have like 5 or 6 different keyboard overdubs. There's a lot going on, uh, and so I'm always going back and trying to figure out, how can I do some semblance of this live, because I don't have 10 hands. I can only play so much at once. So like, yeah, figuring out the best way to recreate it in the fullest way possible. But yeah, they feel fresh. And then over time, certain songs are better to play over and over again than others, if I'm honest. Like some stuff wears on you and you're just sort of like, yeah, I could never play this song again and be good. And some stuff, like I just love to play over and over again. I don't know why. You know,
Yeah.
I have found that the more you play in a touring band, like the more you appreciate the like moments of freedom within a song, where I might not play it. I might have a little solo and I'll try and do it differently, or like there's just little riffs that I can wiggle around on that are like that kind of stuff really like feeds your soul over time, because otherwise you just become a robot and you're just like it's doing everything becomes muscle memory. You don't like need to what I was talking about earlier. You do feel a certain freedom, but you also you want to like explore. You don't want it to like stay like totally robotic, but going back to whether or not stuff feels fresh, yeah, I think that album still feels pretty new. I guess it's been out. Next month it'll be out a year already.
Wow.
I think it came out in May. um, and yeah, I mean, there's still songs that we're rolling out, that because usually Clams have a pretty deep catalog at this point. So it's like a show. For a show we usually play an hour, But when you have like 7 albums worth of stuff to choose from, you're really just picking a few songs from this giant catalog. So we tend to rotate things in and out. And like, as far as the new record, there's still songs on it we haven't played live, I think. Um, and some songs, for that reason I was mentioning, are kind of hard to play live. Like we've tried and sort of pulled them back out because there's just too 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 much to do to like make it sound good, you know?
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, yeah.
In terms of songs that you really enjoy playing, is there one that comes to mind specifically that, or at least of recent, that you're like, yeah, I really enjoy doing that one live for whatever reason?
Well, the Clam song that I love playing the most is a song that was on an album before I was even in the band. There's not even keyboards on the recording of it. Is The Bog? Do you know that
Mm-hmm.
song, The Bog?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I love that song, mainly because it's like pretty weird. It's a pretty weird song, and but yeah, it doesn't even have keyboards on the original recording, but it's got a whole big like instrumental freak out in the middle that I enjoy messing around on. Yeah, it's got a lot of those like traits that I look for that I was saying, like I find freedom in, you know. It's got I don't know. It's also kind of like super amped up, just energetic song. So it's fun in that way. But what's I'm trying to think on the new record. What do I like playing a lot? Uh, I really like playing "What You're Missing." If you know that song,
Mm-hmm.
that's a Cody song. Um, it's just got a more active keyboard part, so it's fun for me. Um, uh, like I like the songs that are um, like I have a lot of like there's most of these songs I'll be switching between keyboard songs in the middle of the song, sounds in the middle of the song, and I have two keyboards, and I'm a lot of times I play analog synthesizer, so I can't pre-save sounds, so I have to like dial knobs in as I'm going, and that stuff over time becomes really fun because it's like it just becomes like this game for me where it's just like can I keep up with all these different changes, and like like it's like playing, I don't know, maybe it's like a video game or something. It's just sort of like pew 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 like it's like that kind of thing.
Have you ever came across a sound that you were like, oh, I wish I could save that, but I'll come across it again if I come across it again, sort of a thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually got this synthesizer recently. It's a Prophet. Are you familiar with those at all?
No, no, not at all.
They're pretty famous synths. They're actually they still make them, but the original ones are from the early '80s, and mine's from the early '80s. I got it off this guy, and you can't save. Well, you can save sounds in there, but you know, but yeah, I've often like I'll spend hours like dialing in some weird sound, and I'll be like, this is great, and I think I'll remember how to do it, and then it's just gone forever. It's like yeah, synthesizers are deep and weird, and you can usually kind of, if you record it on your on some sort of recording device, you can approximate.
Mm-hmm.
You can get pretty close, but I'm still learning a lot about that stuff. It's yeah, I like that game. Yeah.
Are you, by the way, are you dialing it in at least to some extent during a sound check, or is this all on stage when you walk out there to actually perform?
Yeah, you can get pretty close in sound check, and um, we at some point I may start using something that I could save presets for clams. It's more nerve wracking when we're like the opening band in some big scenario, and there's only you only have a 25-minute set, and you're just like, we got to cram as much in as possible, and like um, that in those scenarios, it would be nice to have something where I could just press a button and the sounds would all be there. Um, but yeah, most of the time it's fine. I've been doing it, uh, long enough that I can generally get what I want, more or less. Yeah.
Right. So with this band that you were in previously, did you go from strictly the the party kind of atmosphere to the Clams? Was that the shift that you made after your previous project had ended?
Um, no, so I, yeah, that band was called the Mumblers, and I did that for about 7 years. And that was they were like I'm from San Jose originally, and they were my kind of like hometown friends, a bunch of guys I went to like middle school and high school with. I really, people that I'd known forever, and um, and after that band kind of fizzled out, I was doing solo music for a few years, and I had no intention of joining any bands. I didn't really want to. After just because kind of what I was talking about earlier, just kind of being a loner. I didn't really like the I think I have too big of a conscience to be in bands. Like I don't like I worry about how it's affecting other people's lives. Like what like if like I was the main songwriter of this other band, and so it's just like I'm just dragging all these people through my dreams, and like how's that affecting their life? They're like having to take off work to go on this tour. Like we're not making enough money for this to be like make sense for people to do. That kind of stuff like really weighs on me. So I was just like I'm not trying to start another band. I'll play music with people, uh, but more like less attached, than a band. Like I didn't really mean to join a band. But I joined the Clams kind of by accident. I was uh, my partner is the guitar player of the band La Luz, and the La Luz and the Clams were doing a tour together, like a short tour, just 3 shows in the Northwest. And I was living in Seattle at the time, and I just hopped in the van and was hanging out for 3 shows, and I actually made a little like documentary about that tour before I was in the band. Uh, just I was just sort of like I'm hanging out with these bands for a few days. I'm gonna film it and make a little. I like to have something to do. What if I'm hanging out with a bunch of people? I wasn't playing in the band, so I was just sort of like I'm gonna make something while I'm here. And but so I hung out with the Clams for 3 days. I had known I lived in Oakland for a long time before that, and I knew Nate, the drummer. I didn't ever meet Shannon or Cody in all my years in Oakland.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and but yeah, I hung out with them for a few days, and then a while after that, I don't really remember the exact timeline, but they recorded an album because they were a 3-piece forever. They were just drums, guitar, bass forever, and they recorded an album where they did a bunch of keyboard parts, where Cody and Nate played all the keyboards, and then they wanted to be able to play it live, so they were looking for a keyboard player, and Shannon texted me and just said, "Hey, do you play keyboard?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And she asked if I would do some shows with them, and I thought I thought I was just gonna go fill in for a tour, but now I've been doing it for 10 years.
Pretty long
Just
tour.
yeah, it's a really long tour. It's one long ass tour. Yeah.
Did you have any experience playing keys with other bands prior to this?
Yeah, actually, like that's mainly what I had done. But the odd thing is that she had no way of knowing that. Like I didn't tell her that I played keyboards, and I hadn't publicly played keyboards in a long time. like I had a guitar player in that other band I was in, and um, I yeah, but I grew up playing piano, so I've played keyboards for my whole life pretty much, and I had played uh, in some very obscure bands that nobody's ever heard of. Um,
Until now.
Unfindable bands. These are bands that were like before social media existed and never like released any recordings. So like these are ungoogleable things that
Record
yeah
Store Day 2026 is coming up. It's coming
yeah
up soon, so be on the lookout.
yeah yeah
Um,
yeah.
did you feel even when you started making music that it just came naturally to you, at least to some of an extent?
Hmm. I d- to some yeah I would say so. Um, you know like I had a weird relationship with it, I guess, but I started writing songs when I was a teenager. Um, and I started playing piano when I was a real little kid, like 7 years old or something. Um, and I didn't really want to do it. It was just like my mom put me in piano lessons, and it was sort of like something I grudgingly
Had to do.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I stopped for a while, and then when I was around 12 years old, I got a guitar, and sometime around there, and I also started playing piano again a lot. And yeah, I just, what happened is I hurt myself when I was a teenager. I fell off a skateboard and broke my ankle, and at, I was stuck at home, and I couldn't go hang out with my friends. So I spent a lot of time just playing music, um, during that period. And that's really what, like how I kind of fell in love with it and got into making stuff of my own up. Cause I bought a 4-track recorder and I started just, singing songs I liked, but also just started making stuff up. And, you know, I wouldn't say I was good at it right away, but I definitely always felt kind of uninhibited about making things up, which I think is a big part of being able to write songs, is just to just be all right with making whatever, it doesn't have to be good. um,
It just has to be
but
made. Doesn't have to be good. It
yeah,
has to be made.
yeah, you just gotta, I've always had maybe like an irrational confidence in my own creativity where I'm just like, I could do that, and and so I yeah I always felt like I could do it. I don't know if I was good at it, but I always felt like I could do it, and I think that's a big deal. Just feeling like you can do it. Yeah.
Right. You had already been working on your solo work before joining the Clams, yes?
Yeah, I put out my first solo album. Actually, I put it out maybe only a few months before I started playing with the Clams. I put out a record called Vortex Numbers in 2015, and I started playing in the Clams in 2015.
You're going back to playing guitar and singing in your solo work, right?
Yeah, I play keys or guitar, but live I usually play guitar. But on records, I play lots of keyboards.
Going back to the idea of freedom within songs, is there a different sense of freedom when you're playing guitar from when you're playing keys? Is there a different, like, are the is the boundaries within where you're moving kind of different in a sense?
Yeah, for me, the main freedom is singing actually with my solo stuff. Like, because with Clams, I'm usually not singing lead, and I'm singing harmony. Um, so there's not a lot of like, I can't really switch up my harmony a lot, but I really like the way I like to sing is pretty loose, and I like singing lead for that reason, because you can be kind of like freakier. You can kind of be like I like that part of it. That's I'm like I'm all right at guitar. I'm not a great guitar player, so I'm not like a ripping soloist or something, so I don't feel a lot of like, I wouldn't say I feel a lot of like musical freedom on the guitar, but I love playing guitar, and I have surprised myself. Like I've been playing guitar for most of my life at this point, and I've never had lessons, but I feel like I'm like all of a sudden getting kind of good at it. Like it's like I never thought of myself as a guitar player, but I'm sort of like noticing I'm like, whoa, I can like I can play most stuff I want to play these days, and I don't really know how I got there. You know, it's just consistently flailing around. It got me somewhere.
Do you feel like you are more comfortable on stage behind keys than guitar?
No, I definitely prefer being behind a guitar on stage
Uh,
simply because you can move with it. Uh, the keys, you're like behind a wall. You know, there's like it's like a wall, and it's the keys stay there. I'm very tall, and most keyboard stands are too short for me, so I'm always kind of like hunched over. Like it's like these. There's a lot of reasons I prefer to play guitar on stage. It just feels uh, yeah, like you're just like you're you have a cable, but otherwise you can go wherever you want. You know, like whereas keys, you're just like stuck right there, and you kind of have to look down at the keyboards. At least I do to play. You know, like so it's like I don't know. It feels you. I feel more disconnected from the audience when I'm playing keys than I do playing guitar.
Huh. Okay. I like that you don't look at the cable as being some sort of a leash, because some people do look at that
Uh-huh,
like
uh-huh.
that. Yeah. It's like how much freedom do you want, you know? You got to reel
Yeah,
it in sometime.
yeah, yeah. You can get those cordless guitar radio frequency jack things.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought about that. I've thought about like switching to like a keytar for the keys, so I could just be, on the loose. Could be fun. It's like show up in the bathroom, you know, see who's in there. Yeah. Start shredding for whoever's taking a whiz.
Yeah, but that's nice. That's ambiance.
Live musicians in the bathroom. Yeah, it's like that would be next level.
Yeah. Screw an attendant. You need a live live full band in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Are you focusing on the same aspects of a performance, no matter what you're playing or who you're playing with? Is there always some sort of a through line where your attention goes?
Hmm. I mean, it really does depend. Like with when I do my so-called solo work, I usually play with a band, but I'm the singer, the main singer, and in Clams, I'm usually not the main singer. And you can, I feel like Shannon is such a magnet for people's eyes. You know, like in Shannon the Clams, like people really pay attention to Shannon, so you can. I feel like a lot of the pressure's off me in that band, where like I'm like I can entertain or I could not entertain, and it doesn't truly matter that much. You know, like where but when I'm doing my solo work, I know that I have to kind of like be the one making sure people are interested. So in that sense, I feel that I probably act differently, or like I probably you know feel more pressure to like be a front person, if that makes sense.
Right,
Um,
right.
uh, in Clams, like I feel like I kind of have the luxury of like deciding whether or not I want to like talk between songs or not talk between songs, or like, if I'm, you know, it's a weird job really because no matter if you're like sick or you're having a bad day or whatever, you still have to like go up on stage and put on a show for people. And like in Clams, if I don't feel like talking, I'll play a whole show where I don't say a word to the audience. Or sometimes I talk a lot at a Clam show. It's like kind of like just kind of how the spirit moves me. But when I do a solo show, I feel I don't I, I wouldn't want to just go up there with a bad mood and just not speak to the audience, and like what I mean.
Yeah.
Uh,
Going back to not somehow not bumping into Cody or Shannon during that time of your time in Oakland, were you familiar with the band's music before joining? Had you heard it to some extent before joining the band?
yeah, I was aware of them. Um, we were. I had actually seen them one time um, at a show in San Francisco, um, and then yeah, that. But yeah, mostly when I was my band at the time was touring a lot, and Clams were kind of just getting started at that point, and so they were kind of in the like they were doing more like house shows and warehouse shows at the time that I was around Oakland, and I was just on tour for a lot of that time, so I kind of just missed them at their like really like you know just getting started phase. Um, and because I was really it was like I remember I was just very busy at that time, and so yeah, but I knew who they were. I had heard their music and I liked it. We were kind of doing similar things of just kind of like using a lot of like old rock and roll kind of styles in our music, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. How soon after joining the Clams did you start contributing to new music? Was it pretty soon after joining?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was sort of a weird thing because, like I said, they had recorded this album, "Gone by the Dawn," and I joined the band before that album even came out. So then we were on the kind of album cycle for that band. It was it was like basically almost 3 years until we recorded a new album. It was just like a lot of touring at first, and most of the it was an interesting time because most of their songs previous to that album, I mean, all of their songs didn't have any keyboard. So I was just kind of, I guess I was doing something creative from the start because I was making up keyboard parts for songs that never had them, you know?
Was that a
But
daunting task for you? Just kind of going off on the fly like that, or did you enjoy that? Again,
it
going
was,
back to the freedom aspect.
it was fun. Yeah, it was sort of like, um, I thought the band was good as a trio. I had seen them as a trio, and my main thought was like, I don't want to make this band worse by adding to it. You know what I mean? Like, because you can do that. Sometimes you just don't need more sound. I just didn't want to fuck it up. So I was I felt like I was kind of treading lightly at first because I just didn't want to like be like I'm here to take over. But I just wanted to like make it sound cooler where I could. You know, I got a lot of validation from Shannon's little brother, Patty. Real funny character,
Yeah.
but but he was like, he was around, hanging around when I was playing the first shows that I played with the Clams, and he was just like, dude, I've never heard the band sound so good, and like, like it made me feel like, all right, I'm not like ruining it for like this thing that people love. Like I didn't want to like come in and make it shittier. Um, so that was like at first it was all just kind of like out, treading lightly, but then Onion was the first album that I played on, and it was all new songs. That was super exciting to me to like be like, finally we're doing some new shit, and like could start build this from the ground up. And I felt like I contributed a lot from the start. As far as helping get those songs in shape and coming up with parts and uh, helping with lyrics even on certain songs. So like I felt like I was kind of doing a lot from pretty early on, from you know. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's sort of just been uh, it's very organic, you know. Like we never really talked about like you like whether or not I should do more. It's just sort of happened easily over time. Yeah.
Yeah, was it sort of that organic aura surrounding the situation that kind of led you back into being a part of a band and playing a lot and kind of getting back into the swing of things like that?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like it was sort of low pressure at first, you know. I was just sort of like, yeah, I'll go on a tour. That sounds fun. And like then actually the following tour after that, like after I had done one tour with the Clams, they booked another tour and they didn't ask me to play it, and I was sort of like, oh, I guess that's that, you know, like. And it turned out they just like they were expecting me to do it, but they just like forgot to ask. But I like I had other plans. Like I was going to Europe with La Luz, so I was tour managing their tour. I'd already committed to do that. So they actually did another tour with a different keyboard player after I'd already done one, and then from then on they like were like more conscientious about making sure that I knew what was coming up. uh, but like it yeah it was always pretty loose and easy, and yeah I don't yeah like yeah I guess my answer would be yeah, that was inviting. That it was just I think because of my experience being a like the a band leader or whatever, I'm probably a pretty good band member just because I think I'm pretty good at communicating like where I'm at. You know, like bands are weird, but like I think most of us, I mean all of us in Clams are pretty good, pretty chill, pretty easy to we let each other know where we're at with stuff, and it's been pretty easy, over time to be a part of, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe if it was forced in some way early on, you would have been maybe putting off or kind of rejected it a little bit. Like maybe I don't want to be a part of this.
Well, I guess like my perspective is I never didn't want to be involved in music, but I was just sort of burnt on band dynamics, and
Hmm.
I didn't really want to like be tethered to a bunch of people in that way again. Like I was just because my old band was six, sometimes seven people, and it was just like
Small unit. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, just tiny crew, skeleton crew, um, and and just like every decision you make, it's just like, all right, we might say yes to this, but I gotta wait till I hear back from six other people, and like it's just a pain in the ass, and I was just like didn't really want that in my life. But what I guess I have two perspectives on that. I think that as you get older, like as a musician, you kind of the music world weeds out a lot of people who aren't built for it.
Mm.
Uh, like there's because you really do have to kind of like organize your life in a certain way to even like have time to do this and to financially be able to make it work. Like I've lived like a weird, you know, uh, I've lived on very little money for most of my life, and that involves a lot of decision makings that cut off a lot of other avenues of life. And like I feel like you get after a certain age, you kind of like you're left with more people who are equipped to like deal with those kind of obstacles.
Hmm.
Uh, and
Because
also,
they went down the same route that you did and are continuing to go down.
yeah, yeah, like my first band was a bunch of people who were great musicians, good people, but who weren't really like trying to structure their life in that way. Like they had like other things going on that kind of made touring impossible over the long term. And yeah, you just kind of, to like build that flexibility into your life is not for everybody.
Going back to the process of writing, do you feel like that has evolved throughout your time from first coming into the studio or to the writing session to the most recent releases?
For sure, the last one was pretty different. Um, I mean, we very pointedly tried to collaborate a lot more on this last record. Traditionally, um, Shannon and Cody have written stuff kind of on their own, and that that in itself is pretty different because Cody is pretty like self-contained. He'll write. Um, he's pretty good recording engineer, so he'll like do like a very complete demo with like drums and bass and a bunch of instrumentation. Whereas Shannon is not a recording engineer, so usually what she brings is more like a very like a voice memo from her phone or something a lot more raw and like needs more input to be complete, I would say. But that was like kind of where how it had been in the past. This time around, uh, we we pointedly like tried to write together. We did a bunch of like jamming, which we had never really done, where we were just like, let's see what comes of some jamming, and like I would say like a decent percentage of stuff on the album came out of that process, and there was still stuff that came out of like demos that people wrote on their own. But this album was way more collaborative, I would say, um, and it was fun. It was fun. Everybody, did you watch that 9 hour Beatles documentary where they
No, they're in the was it the studio making what was it?
uh, is it Abbey Road or what's that album before Abbey Road or not?
Is it Sergeant Pepper's? Is not maybe not that one.
No, it's not Sgt. Pepper's. But I think it's maybe the movie's called Get Back or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 9 hour documentary where they're just like you really see the process of how those songs materialized, and
Yeah.
I think we were all kind of like inspired by that. Like, oh, let's like come without fully formed ideas. Let's
Develop them
let,
together.
yeah, let's see what happens if we you know throw these things into the blender live, and um,
Now, once again, you did bring it to the camera and then you did shoot like at least 9 or 10 hours of raw footage of that
yeah,
process.
in about 50 years they'll release the documentary. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. Get your tickets now for sure. It's
yeah.
gonna sell out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you kind of exist in this middle ground between developing full instrumentation and just kind of having like a raw idea for what you do with your solo work? Is there somewhere in the middle for you in some cases with developing songs on your own?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, Usually I write stuff and I it's there's not like there's no band to practice with really. So like usually I'll try and demo stuff out at home and I get as deep as I can with it. I'm getting a little bit better at recording, but I'm not much of a recording engineer. Um, so like I know enough to like get my ideas across, but I usually end up recording with a friend somewhere. Um, and at that point I'll call in a couple of friends um, to play drums or bass or something, just to like fill it out. But usually I have like a vision in mind. I can like describe roughly what I'm going for, and then most of the time the people that play on my records are like much better musicians than me, so like they kind of bring uh, they kind of elevate stuff, you know. You know, they like take it to like a place kind of beyond what I probably would have done if I was in control, you know. I do think it's, you know, yeah, let it putting in someone else's hands and them doing something cooler than what you were gonna do is cool. I like that part.
In terms of your career in music, I mean, you got Clam stuff, you got your own stuff, and you on occasion perform with you, and you guys are married, you and Shayna, correct? You guys are, yeah,
Hmm.
um, yeah, the magnificent Shayna Cleveland from La Luz, and please go back and listen to that episode. What is it like performing with her?
Um, yeah, I love doing that stuff. We've done a few iterations of that band. We've done a few tours where it was just her and me, uh, and and then we've done a few with like a full band, um, and uh, I've played keys with her and I've played bass with her, um, but you know that's that's the best. It's tricky. It's tricky for us to do that these days because we have a son. We have a 5-year-old son. I mean, we've done it, but generally we try to stagger tours so we're one of us is at home when the other one's out. Um, but yeah, I mean, those tours were so fun. I mean, I especially love doing the duo tours because we could just tour in a like a regular car, you know, like a little car, and it was you just uh, it's kind of like a weird incognito experience where you can like with the band you're always like worried about where you're parking. You're like we're obviously a band. People you know you don't want your gear stolen or whatever. But when
Yeah.
you're in a car with a trunk, you can just kind of like roll into town and walk around. And yeah, we did a tour where we were opening up for that band, the Mountain Goats, and they were in a bus, and we were in just like a small sedan, and we would pull up to the venue every day, and the venue workers would like wave us away and be like, "No, this is reserved parking. It's for the band." And we were like, "We're the band," like you know, like. Um, but yeah, that I love
Did
doing that.
anybody from the from the Mountain Goats roll with you guys at least for a little bit, or no? Was that not happening?
Nah, they that would have been funny if they chose to get in our little ass car when they had this luxurious bus to. Uh, those guys have a good system. They had like bikes. They were like rolling into town with bikes on their bus and like riding bikes around town. They had a they had a comfortable scenario, way more comfortable than ours.
No,
But we were,
you guys had skateboards on that one, right?
yeah, we should have just toured on a skateboard instead of that car. Then we would have been very free.
Yeah, it's just about as free as you could get, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you enjoy touring with all these different situations that you've been in throughout touring? Is that what makes it enjoyable for you that you don't know exactly what's going to happen, even though you've been down this road? It might lead to something that you're not weren't expecting.
Yeah, I still like. It's funny because I feel like I do many different levels of touring still. Like Clams at this point are playing pretty nice venues and it's pretty comfortable touring experience. You know, like we generally aren't like sleeping on floors anymore or like just roughing it like you do when you first start out. But I still do. I still go on tour. Like I did a tour by myself this last summer, and I was definitely sleeping on people's floors and like like just like I love doing that shit because that's part of the joy of touring is just like meeting people, ending up in weird places, like having conversations, seeing people's houses. uh like I love doing that stuff, and I kind of miss that aspect of touring with Clams, so I like that I get to do kind of like uh m- more raggedy tours on my own. And when Shayna and I are out, like the money is tighter. You got to be more frugal about how you're approaching it, and we definitely will stay with a lot more friends, or figure out. And also, when you're two people, it's easier to accommodate. Clams is it's the four band members plus we have two crew members these days, so it's kind of a lot to ask to be like, hey, can we
Yeah.
crash at your house? So like you're just more nimble when you're a smaller operation, and you can kind of like just stay with more friends. I don't know. I still love doing that stuff too. So yeah, I like touring in different uh, kind of configurations, and that kind of thing.
What's the most dingy accommodation that you found yourself in while on a tour?
Dude, I mean, could probably talk all day about this stuff. I remember sleeping on some guy's floor in Denton, Texas, a long time ago, and realizing that I was like surrounded by piles of hair, that they had like been giving like people haircuts in their living room, and they just like left all that hair, and
Wait,
there
and you didn't clock that before you laid down?
it was like dark when we went to sleep, and then like I woke up, I was like, what is going on? And there was just like big ass piles of hair clippings all around me. Uh, I slept on. I remember sleeping in somebody put my old band up in Athens, Georgia, many years ago, and they had like a one bedroom apartment, and they put up my like, 6-person band in their one bed. So we were just kind of in every surface possible, and I slept on like the kitchen floor, on the linoleum floor, and I woke up, and they had a Great Dane that just like showed up and was just like licking my face at like 5 in the morning, like. So that was a good one. I've slept on pool tables and bars. I've slept on
Was this
bars.
was this a bar that you were performing in? Were these bars that you were performing in, or sort of a di- second location bar?
Yeah, I played this place in St. Augustine, Florida called Nobby's, and it's kind of a classic dive bar. And they after the show, I didn't know where I was going to sleep. Um, I was touring for my solo band, and we had a trio. It was me, my friend Andrew, and my friend Jacob, and we asked the promoter, because we were, money was pretty tight on this tour. We weren't really getting any hotels or anything. And I was just like, hey man, anywhere we could crash? And he was like, I could talk to the bar and see if they'll let you sleep here. I was like, sure. And they let us sleep in there. And so two of us slept. They had two pool tables. Two of us slept on pool tables. One of us slept on a bench. Um, but the pool table was actually really surprisingly comfortable. I would sleep on a pool table again.
You
Uh,
would be open to doing this again?
yeah, I would do a whole tour sleeping on pool tables if I could. That was
Pool
like,
table tour,
yeah,
PTT. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, I slept on an actual bar one time because I played a bar in St. Louis that let us sleep in the bar, and uh, and it was like really kind of gnarly, and I didn't want to sleep on the ground, so I was just like, I'm gonna sleep on the bar, and I spent the whole night just like trying not to roll off the bar. Um, and hmm,
And you and
I
you
mean,
you succeeded in that. I'm assuming you didn't. You know.
I didn't crash into the like soda hose or anything. Yeah, um, yeah. I don't know. God, so many weird places over the years. When I was touring with my old band, which again was 6 people, they we almost never stayed in a hotel, so we slept in a lot of ridiculous situations, and I've slept in like uh like Walmart parking lots, like a lot of like I've slept on like the grass at a church, like
Outside in a tent, or just out and about?
just just a sleeping bag on the grass. Yeah.
How did that work? Did anything go awry that time, or no?
They were actually cool. Like we actually got caught by the church people when they were nice to us. That was in uh I think we've done that a few places, but the place that we actually got like, you know, somebody actually talked to us was Tacoma, Washington. Somebody somebody came and was just like, "You guys all right? Okay, that's cool." Like we just told them we were a band, and they're like, "All right, that's cool." They were nice about it. Uh,
That is
um,
a very nice response.
yeah, yeah. Um, we were at South by Southwest one time, and we tried to sleep because you always hear that Walmart lets people like sleep in their RVs in their parking lot. So we're like, let's just go sleep at the Walmart because we don't have a place to stay. South by Southwest, everything's expensive. Um, and so we went and tried to sleep at the Walmart, and one of my bandmates actually tried to pitch a tent in like one of the like dirt islands in the middle of the Walmart parking lot, and we got booted pretty quick out of there.
Yeah.
But then we went to it. We did end up sleeping at a church that time too, and with nobody. That was fine. Like so. Yeah, a lot of
Was the tent put up at the church as well, or was that a one and done for the tenting?
there might. Yeah, he might have done the tent again because yeah, I think it was. You know, it's March in Texas can rain. It can rain.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, yeah.
that's amazing, man. Yeah, has music always been a way for you to connect with others, though? I mean, have you always looked at it as a vehicle towards connection, whether it be with people you're playing with or people you're playing for, or anyone in between, church parishioners, perhaps, or whatever?
Uh, yeah. I think music. I think it's definitely. I feel a connection with the artists I love. Like as a fan. I've always felt that. Those are like my friends, even though I've never met a lot of them. A lot of them are dead or whatever. So like, I don't know. I feel like with that's kind of the beauty of it, right? Is you can connect with people across space and time through recordings, and you can find people that are you know speaking the same language as you, that are that you might not actually ever meet or talk to, but there's just like that are so as a fan, I feel like it's always been my community in that way. And as far as yeah, like I think a lot of musicians are you know uh, lonely in their own way and reaching out, trying to like have a yeah, definitely a connection to other people and just kind of dealing with their own demons and in a way that feels uh, human. Like a way to like to yeah breach get across the void that like separates everyone. Is get across that loneliness to have some sort of human interaction. So yeah, it's definitely I think an attempt to reach out to other people in that way.
Right on. Will, I really appreciate you coming on here, sir. Thank you very, very much, man. But before I let you go, we got some promo to do here, and you're involved in a lot of stuff, so we got a lot of stuff to go over.
All right.
Um, the Wax and String and I'm a Fool 7 inch is out now via Easy Eye Sound, and yeah, people can pick it up through easyeyesound.com. That's the best place, right?
Yeah, yeah, you can probably get it on the shannontheclams.com too, but probably
Hmm.
I don't know if that just links to Easy Eye Sound. I don't even know exactly.
Well, I think that might link to the, I believe it's a merch table through the website. So either way, through the website, shannontheclams.com or Easy Eye Sound, that will bring you to some sort of a shop where everybody needs to go no matter what. So whatever avenue you choose, that's the correct one. Um, uh, Easy Eye Sound has some other releases as well. Of course, The Moon is in the Wrong Place and Year of the Spider, and maybe another release as well. along with some
Onion.
t-shirts and such, and Onion, of course, and also the Bandcamp, shannontheclams.bandcamp.com is also another place where you can go and support the band there. All the music is streaming everywhere, wherever people get their music, that's where they can find it, and people can stay up to date with news, shows, tours, and everything else by following the band on Instagram at Shan and the Clams. Now, Will, your music is streaming everywhere as well, correct?
Uh-huh.
Right on. And your YouTube has some music videos that accompany some of these songs that you've been releasing, right?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just my name, Will Sprott. I think you could find it that way.
And you have a website as well. So good stuff on there. So if you're doing some shows,
Uh-huh.
those all the information is up there at willsprott.com. And people can stay up to date with everything that you're doing by following you on Instagram as well, right? That's the best place.
Yeah, totally.
And that's at Will Sprott on Instagram, and your Bandcamp as well, willsprott.bandcamp.com.
Yeah.
And after you're done visiting all of those avenues, go listen to La Luz, go stream their stuff. I think their stuff is through Hardly Art, right?
Yep. Their latest album's on Sub Pop.
Sub Pop. That's what I
Yeah.
meant to say for the latest release. I want to
Uh-huh.
appease everybody here. Hardly Art, Sub Pop. Um,
Yeah.
go buy it from your local record stores. Yeah, and please go back and listen to the Shayna episode and the Shannon episodes. And Will, I really appreciate you coming on here, sir. Absolute
Cool,
pleasure
man.
chatting with you. Do we
Yeah,
have
nice stuff
anything
too.
else? Yeah, hey, I did not mean to cut you off there. That was me being a bad host. I was not taking the page from Larry King's book, and I apologize for that. But do we have anything else to promote before we cut you loose?
No, I think you covered the bases. Yeah, like those, yeah, Clams, my solo stuff, and Shayna's stuff is kind of my current musical world. So, um, yeah, if you look up Shayna Cleveland, I've played on all three of her albums, um, and Shannon the Clams and Will Sprott. That's my world right now.
That's a trifecta right there.
Yeah.
Will, I appreciate you spending some time with me today. Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop recording this and I'll talk to you in a minute, okay?
Right on. Cool.
All
Sounds good.
right.